what's up? I hope you had a great week. Welcome back to our channel. We are a Tribe Called Dhillon podcast. I'm Angie Dhillon.
And I'm Rose Dhillon.
And I'm Alvin Dhillon.
And we are back again, and I hope you all had a great week. Don't forget, check out our social channels. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're on TikTok. And there is some content on there that you might kind of find funny. We've got some blooper reels on there, kind of like the making of a podcast, our screw-ups. And please feel free to check it out and have a good laugh with us, because we always have a good laugh on set. Today, we are talking about something that I secretly like. I don't know why. I love horror movies, scary movies, anything to do with the afterlife. So today, the team and I, we are going to be discussing life after death. I think we're going to make it a 2-part episode because I just think there's so much to talk about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is part 1. So I'm the moderator today, Rose. I stole your job a little bit.
Yes, I've taken a day off from being the moderator today. I'd like to just answer the questions.
Yes, and I think that's great. We're going to switch it up sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, let's just go straight to the first question. Rose, I'm going to ask you this question.
Oh, wow. On the hot seat
You're
already.
the hot seat. Okay.
Woo, okay, let's do this.
Okay, I want to know, do you believe that there's life after death?
Yes. And I guess what we should say, define what you mean by life. I believe, my truth is that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. So does my spirit die when this physical body goes back into earth? No, I don't think my spirit dies. I think my spirit continues on once I'm done from this form. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, that's actually... That's pretty profound. Whoa, you got me there. Okay, so you do believe there's an afterlife, like our soul gets carried on and goes into another body.
Correct.
That's almost like reincarnation, right?
Yeah, I definitely feel there's truth behind reincarnation. I'm trying to steer away from the word believe, because I think a belief is just, something that you feel is true. I know it's true for myself. I feel like I've come from a reincarnation. And I will go into another reincarnation when I'm expired this little body.
Okay, why do you feel that you come from a reincarnation? Do you feel that you're someone, your soul belonged to someone else and it's just using your physical body in today's life?
Yes.
Why do you feel that?
And I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone else, but for myself, I've had some experiences in my life that we'll talk about in future episodes that have just helped me to understand myself a little better. And so I really do feel that I have reincarnated from some other human life before. And I don't think I'm going to learn everything I'm supposed to learn in this life. So more than likely I will come back in another journey, in another lifetime.
Okay, I like that.
I don't think you guys are going to be, I know that you won't be my brother and sister again. I won't have the same parents. I won't have the same people, but I will come back when I'm supposed to come back.
That's interesting that you say that I'm not going to have you two as my siblings, because I was just thinking about the same thought yesterday when I was mentally preparing for our episode. I'm like, okay, what I'm going to say, what am I going to ask them? And it's funny, you just literally took the words out of my head, because I was thinking the same thing that, well, of course, I'm going to answer this question. Yes, I do think there's an afterlife, but I think, am I going to have you folks as my siblings in the next life? Are mom and dad going to be my parents? No, I don't. I think the experience in the next life is going to be different. Yes. Okay. Elle, do you believe there's life after death?
I do believe so. Yeah. I would say maybe if you asked me 10 years ago, I would say, yeah, I kind of would have believed it, but I feel like I wouldn't have had any real, I would say hard evidence or real type of evidence that to me it seemed real that made me feel that there is life after death. But I would say in the last few years, I've definitely had some experiences where it's basically slapped me in the face and tell me that there's life after death. And if you don't believe it, then you're on something, because it's I think it's as you get older, you really get in touch with the universe, or how people say in your dreams, you're pretty much in your spiritual world. And I think when I'm dreaming, when I'm awake, I've had those experiences. So it's really made me believe that, yes, there definitely is life after death. And also just hearing other people's stories and experiences, that if someone tells you one story and someone else corroborates that and someone else corroborates that story, you're kind of like, okay, well, maybe they are telling the truth. But until it happens to you, I guess you won't really believe it. So I'm a firm believer that there is life after death.
What changed for you? Because you said if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have been maybe a little, iffy about it or not unsure.
I guess maybe 10 years ago, I was like, not health-wise, I was in a different state. So I was kind of like blaming the world, blaming the universe type of thing, or why is this going on? So I was not even in tune to be receptive to any of those kinds of emotions or those kinds of visions that they say. But I would say in the last few years, one of the big ones that happened to me was, this is the first time this has actually ever happened to me. So I thought there was something wrong with me until it happened to Mom, who was at the same time. So we went up island to Nanaimo, which is a city on Vancouver Island.
Is this a true story?
This is a true story, yeah.
Okay.
So this
and how long ago did this happen?
3 years ago. Oh, yeah, 3 years ago.
Okay.
It was me, Mom, and Dad. We went up island to visit one of my friends.
Oh, you mean your roommates?
Yeah, sorry, my roommates.
Oh yeah, me, Mom, and Dad. Okay, your roommates?
Yeah.
So you went somewhere with your roommates?
They picked me up.
So you went somewhere with your roommates?
Yeah, we went up island to visit my friend. He had moved out there about a year before. He took his family up there, and he said, "You haven't come to visit in a while." So I thought, yeah, you know what? We wanted to go up island just to get away for a bit. So I was like, let's go visit him at the same time. And we were going to just go check out like houses and see what's going on with the market over there. So we went up there. It was a nice sunny day. We stayed at this very old hotel that was in the heart of the downtown. It's a very small downtown, like small town feel. We were there about 2 nights. Yeah, 2 nights. The first night, I would say I had no more than like 2 beers. So I can't say I was drinking or I was drunk or anything like that. There was 2 beds side by side. So Mom and Dad were on the bed to the right. I was on the bed to the left, towards the window. And I started dozing off probably around like 11 p.m., 11:30. And something like I just started hearing like, or feeling this like, I kept looking to my left, like the corner in the wall. Like I would feel there's something there, but I was like, I'm just tripping. I was like, I'm just tripping. And then I go to sleep. And while I'm sleeping, all of a sudden I feel like this thing that goes over my mouth and covers my mouth and puts a weight on my chest. And I'm starting to like trying to wake up. Like it's almost like I'm half awake, but I'm not. I'm trying to wake up and something's holding my mouth shut and holding me down. And I'm struggling to like get out of my sleep. And it was like the scariest feeling I've ever had. And I've never had this in my life before. So I'm struggling for about maybe like, I'd say a minute or two. And then finally I get woken up by my parents and they're like, "You're having a bad dream. What's going on?" And I told them what happened. I was like, I feel like something's holding my mouth shut and putting weight on top of me. And I was like, I've never experienced this in my life. I was like, this is the scariest feeling ever. My parents were just thinking like, you're having a bad dream. So I just like, they're like, just try to stay awake for a little bit and maybe it'll go away. So I tried to stay awake for a little bit, but I was tired. I was like, I can't only watch so much TV. So I tried to roll on my side. So I slept on my side. And then I started hearing this voice saying, roll over, roll over, roll over. And I literally would wake up and I'd be like, oh, that's some crazy dreams I'm having. And I could just stay awake for a little bit. I was like, don't roll over, don't roll over. So I go back, lay on my side again, and I'm hearing this voice, roll over, roll over, roll over. And then finally I don't, and something grabs me and rolls me over, and same thing happens. They go up to my chest and they're closing my mouth shut, and I can't talk, and I'm like, it's like you're being like strapped down and you're in like a doze and a daze, but you can't get out of your sleep. It's like the craziest feeling ever. So then finally, parents wake me up again and they're like, "You're having this dream again." And I literally just didn't go to sleep the rest of the night. I was sat outside on the balcony for a couple hours. I sat up the whole time. I was wired. I was like, this is too freaky. I was like, I want to change rooms. So I was like, there's something going on here. So my initial thought was like, this room is haunted. I was like, something is going on here. I was like, there's some spirit here. Like this is a very old building. Something must have happened.
So Al, you've never experienced anything like that?
I've never had anything like that in my life, ever.
Like you felt like a physical energy, like something holding you down?
Physical energy holding me down. And I heard the voice, because when I wouldn't want to roll over, it would say, roll over, roll over, roll. And it would grab me to roll over, and it was able to like hold me down and hold my mouth shut.
Was it a male or a female voice?
it felt like a female. It felt like a female voice.
Oh, interesting.
So,
female energy.
Yeah, female energy.
Female energy.
Yeah.
You can pick up the masculine and independent.
Yeah, and I won't say the hotel's name because I immediately went up the next day to see the reviews and I didn't see anybody reporting any issues about it. But I went down to tell the lady, I said, I would like to switch rooms. I told her what happened and she said, oh no, we've never heard any reports, but she's like, that's probably called
sleep paralysis.
Sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
She's like, I've had it. And they were all like right after the, oh, I've had it. She's had it. And they're all very like, we've had this before. I was like, I've never had this in my life. I was like, I've never experienced this. She was like, no, unfortunately, we're fully booked. We can't switch you to any rooms. And I tried looking online and every other hotel within that area was fully booked. It was a busy time in the summer.
Al, before you continue, because I don't know, what's sleep paralysis?
So sleep paralysis basically is like when you're in a half state. They say it's when you're going through either withdrawal, stress, or there's a few different factors. But it could be alcohol induced but you need to have like extreme amounts, I think, of alcohol to have this. But it's basically like your body's trying to wake up or your mind's trying to wake up, but your body's still in like a sleepy state. So it's like your body's trying to get up, but your mind is not allowing it. And you're not connected. So you're not waking up at the same time as your body.
Wow.
I think that's roughly what it is. It's basically just you're not in sync with each other. So your body's trying to move and your mind's still asleep, or your mind's trying to get up, your body's still asleep. It's that type of feeling. So it made sense when they told me, but I was like, I've never had this in my life. So the next day I told my parents, I was like, I'm not sleeping in that bed. I was like, if I have to stand up all night, I'll do that. So my parents were like, no, you know what? We'll switch beds. We'll all go into that bed and you sleep on this one. But because I was still paranoid, I was like, I'm not sleeping. So I propped up myself on the bed with all these pillows. And so I just sit up like this. I was like, I won't be able to fall asleep like this. And I was watching TV. This is probably around 1 a.m. And I slowly started to doze off, but I'm still like lying up like this. And then all of a sudden, I start hearing, so something's freaking out. And I'm like in my sleep. I all of a sudden look over and then mom's sleeping on the exact same side that I was sleeping on, and it's happening to her. But for me, I was in shock for the first 10 seconds of watching her. And then I'm like, I should wake her up. And I was like, no, I need to record this. So I go to grab my phone. And by the time I grab my phone, I guess it's been like 30, 40 seconds now. And I'm like trying to hit record. And then dad woke up at the time and started waking up dad. But I was watching her and you could see she was like struggling. It looked like something's holding her and she's jostling around. She's like, trying to get out of her sleep. And something was rolling around. And dad wakes up. She was like, I just felt exactly what you felt. She's like, something held my mouth down, something held my chest down. She wouldn't let me wake up, and it was like talking to me. And then same thing, it happened to her again. And after that, we're peacing out of here. I was like, we're done. We're not coming back here again. And we told the lady the next day. She's like, oh, you must have had sleep paralysis too. And I'm like, there's no way. Two people. Mom has never had that in her life too. Mom never even had one drop of alcohol.
Right.
And it happened. And I watched her happen to her. I was like, that's what I felt like. And that's when she was like, yeah, that was a ghost there. So I think that there's probably some soul there, that something must have happened, and they must have gotten reports from it, because that building is very old. It's probably built from the 40s or 50s.
Oh, wow.
And I think I don't know if it's on any burial grounds, who knows, but there was something going on there that if I didn't see it happen to mom, I would definitely have thought I had sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And I never had that. It happened to me after that.
Sounds like it was some sort of a tormented soul that was lingering in that room. And the fact that when
I heard her saying roll over, and it'd be like an energy like roll over. And then when she finally got me to roll over, and it was like she put their weight and it would close my mouth. And it was like freaky, because I would be like this, where I'm trying to open my eyes just enough to get, but it'd be like holding my eyes shut, be like, you're not going to wake up. You're not going to wake up from this.
Wow.
It was so scary. Scariest thing I've ever had in my life, or experienced in my life.
Okay, so nothing was happening on the other bed, though, just in that one bed.
Just in that one corner. And whenever I did wake up, I would just feel like my eyes would just look to the corner of the wall. Like you'd feel like there's something like just waiting there, like it's a soul.
So something obviously happened in that room.
Yeah.
Something. And nothing happened to dad, but it happened to mom. And mom's the one that slept on that one side. And when I saw it happening to her, even dad was like, got up and saw her too. And he's like, that's the same thing that happened to you yesterday. And I was like, wow, yep,
that's interesting.
Not crazy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because mom's very spiritual.
Yeah.
And usually souls or, negative forces don't come to people that are, I guess spiritual, or don't attack them in that way.
I would
which
say,
is interesting.
I don't think it's attack if they're trying to get their point across.
Their message.
Yeah, their message.
They had a message.
So you're right. They're going to find anybody and everything. Like you said, she was in the exact same spot as you were.
And when I saw it happening to her, it was like, you can tell like she was freaking out. Like it's like she was trying to wake up from what was happening to her, but she couldn't wake up. And only time she woke up was when Dad started and that's the only time I woke up too. I couldn't get out of it until Dad started shaking me to like get me out of it.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
Wow,
That's a pretty powerful story, guys. I hope you enjoyed that.
That's
a great
scary.
one.
Life after death.
that gave me the heebie-jeebies there.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so that kind of made you a believer in that there's something like some sort of
If that didn't make you a believer, I don't know what would.
Right.
Interesting.
And same question to you. I want to hear your perspective.
Okay. Do I believe there's life after death? Okay. So there's obviously no scientific evidence that states that there's life after death. We don't know, right? It's just what we feel, what we think, what we talk, to our colleagues or people in society that have an opinion about this topic. Do I believe there's life after death? I don't really know if there's life after death. I do think there's a transition, though. I think something happens to your soul when you die. And I think what I believe is that if your soul just was restless in this present life, or it didn't accomplish the goals that it wanted to, it didn't learn the lessons in this life that it needed to, I think, yes, you're going to come back in some form in the next life, whatever you want to call that life, afterlife, spirit world. I don't really know. I don't really have an answer, but I just don't think your journey just comes to an end. And I think there's different levels of, how can I
awakening?
Yeah. And how can I say, I think there's different, here's the word. I think there's different levels of dimensions on the other side. So if you are an amazing human being, you did good deeds while you were alive, I think you get a straight pass and you I don't know, I'm going to come to this question after. I don't know if heaven and hell exist, but I think you get a direct line to a really cool place where, you're on the clouds and
Paradise.
and you're overlooking at your loved ones that are still around. And if they need help, you can kind of have a direct link to them. So I think there's different levels of dimensions. And if you're not a really good human being, then you're going to be sent to a really sucky part of that dimension. So that's what I believe. And I think all of your good deeds and all of your actions here contribute to where your soul is going to end up in the afterlife, wherever that is. Make sense?
Yeah. And that's actually a really good point because when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, it was very early in the chapters and he was saying similar to what you're saying, which was, if you're doing what you're doing, which is quote unquote, I don't like to say bad or good, but stuff that's not right. When you pass on, you come back in a journey that's even darker or even more harder in your next life. So like you were saying, I always say life is a series of tests and death is final exam. And if you don't kind of pass those series of tests, you come back and you're in a tougher situation than you were in this present life. So you get the opportunity in this present life to kind of work through those
to figure it out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't really take the opportunity to work through it, then you come back and you're in an even more harder. And then it apparently goes until you kind of have your quote unquote awakening, I should be, being of service or kindness or love and compassion, however you want to use those phrases. But it was very early on, and that stuck with me when I read that. I was like, oh yeah, that's why you see people who are kind of going down a path of lying, cheating, stealing, all that. They kind of go down really quick.
Self-deteriorate.
Yeah, really quickly. And then you wonder, you're like, oh, wonder what's going to happen to you when you leave the place. And I do believe that they'll come back and have to redo that cycle again, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I'm starting to read the Bhagavad Gita. It's very deep,
very
profound. I think I'm only on page 3, but I'm trying to absorb. I'm trying to absorb everything. I don't want to just read it. But when you read, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode where you're reading it, but you're not absorbing the content.
Yeah.
So if it takes me 10 minutes extra to read that page and understand the information, I want to make sure I'm absorbing it like a sponge.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the next question. So now that we all collectively agree that there's something when we die, we go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you guys touched a little bit about this, but okay, what do you think happens to your soul when you die? So whether you're being cremated, you're being buried, do you think your soul is still in your body, or do you think the moment that you die, boom, your soul's gone? Al, I'll go to you for this question.
It's a good question. clearly don't have any science to back this up. So it's going to be clearly my perspective of what I think is what's possible. I think that if you lived like your life in the physical world to the best of your abilities, and you tried to be a good person to the best of your abilities by not like stealing, not hurting other people, not abusing other people or abusing animals, and you weren't actively going out of your way to be a bad person. You actually tried. You tried your best, and I'm not going to say like giving you devices makes you a bad person, because that becomes an addiction issue. But I mean, just being a bad person, like you were a serial killer on this planet, where you actively I know you must have had some trauma as a kid, but you didn't use it to now go kill 30 people and say that this is why I did it. I think if you did the best you could, I think you go to paradise. And I think how it works is like, you leave your body for a little while. You stay in the realm over here. You're in this area. You're still here, but you're not in the physical form. And then they, like what I've heard is they say like angels will come down and they slowly help carry you over into the paradise world. And that's where it's just whatever your experience is. It's like bliss, happiness, because they always say like the good souls are happy, and that's where you really want to get to. And I think if you've done bad, you were a serial killer, you've ruined lives, you've done terrible things, then I think what happens is, like they're saying there's heaven and hell. I think you don't get to go to that side of the world. You get to go to the other side, which is pretty much hell. And I think you'll probably get reincarnated and come back as something worse, or you'll stay in that side where you got to sit with those kinds of souls. Okay. I think that's what I believe, because I have other experience that we'll get into another time that helped me really see that there is one world here and there's another world over here. Like they say the underworld and the upper world. I feel like they're sitting in this level here, and they're not able to carry over to the side that where everybody else got like a passage to, like they say like heaven. And I feel like they're stuck in this dimension over here, and they can't get to the other side because they didn't, maybe they weren't a good person in this physical form.
Well, this is obviously going to be, we always say this, we're going to talk about this on another episode because we just have so much stuff, but we will, because the two of you did ayahuasca. Yeah, and that's where I think
that's where a lot of my
and so that's where
that's a whole 1 hour episode that we're going to
and I haven't done ayahuasca. These two are trying to convince me to do ayahuasca.
Everybody should do ayahuasca.
And we'll talk about what ayahuasca is. We'll explain it a little bit later, because I'm still trying to understand. So ayahuasca is where it's a spiritual journey that takes you to a different dimension, and you connect with spirit loved ones or people that how can I explain it? What is ayahuasca?
That's what you experience. You take ayahuasca is a plant that comes from the
plant medicine.
It's from the Amazon jungle. It's a certain type of tree or certain type of plant. I believe it's the root part of it. One
is the root and one is the leaf.
Yeah, they take two types to make a compound out of it, and then you have to boil it for like 6 to 8 hours to make the drink, and that drink is called ayahuasca, or they call it Pachamama in Latin. And you take that, and it's a hallucinogenic effects. Also those psychedelics, and it takes about, I think, an hour sort of kick in. It's just different amounts that each person has to take, but you're supposed to do a minimum of a 2-day ritual or ceremony. Because what they say is that whatever you experience on the first night is the complete opposite on the second night. So if you've had a really terrible experience or things are coming up on your first night, it'll be better on your second. If you had a great first night, you're going to have to go through hell on the second night.
Right. And it's supposed to be the death of you or your old self
or your
the first
ego.
Night. Okay. Yeah. And then the rebirth of you the second night. It shows you what you're meant to see at that moment in time. It doesn't cure everything. No. It doesn't, but it's supposed to help you on your spiritual journey to say, hey, look, you weren't believing in the spiritual world, or you thought everything was science-based. I'll show you what you're meant to see. And then, but a lot of people, when we did it, they couldn't handle it. We all collectively had a rough first night. We had to dig deep, see a lot of demons, see a lot of things that we didn't want to deal with. And some people didn't want to do it the next day. They were afraid. They were so scared. We were all afraid. I was like, do I have to experience that again? And the shamans and everybody there really talked us into it to be like, you have to do it for 2 nights. You're here for a reason. You wouldn't have come here if your life was all jolly and great and you were in a spiritual level like where you wanted to be. So he's like, just go through it and ask for what you're meant to see. And we did. And the second night was what really made us realize that this is something
people need to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ayahuasca in essence is kind of like a spiritual awakening, right? It's part of the spiritual awakening process. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And it's just because I want to make sure I cover this in an entire episode, to really help people walk through, but there's different levels of psychedelics. So ayahuasca is like rocket ship, going to space.
It's like Mount Everest.
Yeah. There's other ones that you can do to tap into, like you can do magic mushrooms, like
LSD.
all those other ones that are not as two-part series,
deep
as deep. And I don't think you go to the same dimensions. So ayahuasca was really, Al and I essentially just decided to skip college and just go for our PhD.
Okay. And I didn't. I stuck back here. I'm like, I'll just stay here with the bachelor's here.
And it was
while you guys go for your master's.
Too. It's not really something where like you can just say, I'm going to go on Saturday and do ayahuasca.
No.
You have to prepare for it. Minimum of 2 weeks before, you have to change your diet. No alcohol, no weed, no other drugs. You have to eliminate like
animals.
Yeah, like meat.
Yep.
Dairy, they want up to even about 1 week before strict no dairy. You have to follow what they. Yeah, they do a lot of things.
Why do you have to do a diet change? Is it 2 weeks before?
2 weeks before it starts. When we asked him what's the reasoning for it, he said for people that are like heavy drinkers or that are coming here to get rid of their addiction, he's like, the problem is with alcohol is like it does a lot of things to the mind and the spirit and the soul that when you come here to do ayahuasca, he's like, you could have a seriously traumatic experience to the point where it might be worse for you. The point where like, those two medicines don't mix together. So you need to have it flushed out of your system before you come and do it, because there could be some like long-term effects of you mixing the two together.
Okay.
So and then when we asked him what's the reasoning for all the other dietary restrictions, he's like, this is given me from my elders who have been doing this for hundreds and thousands of years. So he's like, we follow what they say because it's clearly worked for them and they've respected the ritual and the plant. So he's like, we want to bring that to you guys and not just say, let's do it our way.
Okay. And that's another thing to add on to Al before I know we wrap up for today for this episode.
No, I think I have a couple more questions.
I thought you wanted to do it as your next
We are going to do 2-part, but I've got a whole series of questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's something meant to be respected. It's not a party drug. It's not to go out with your friends and like, oh, I'm tripping out. No, you need to make sure you're in the right settings with the right people and the right spiritual leaders doing this, because this is serious business. And there have been instances where folks that were, maybe suicidal or had severe depression have not been able to make their way back. So I definitely say this is not light. This is something that's take it seriously. And it's not for everyone. But if you're on that path to spiritual awakening, it can kind of just, start the engine and get you kind of going. And that's what it did for us. That was one of the most profound experiences of my life. And again, I'll share details with folks.
Okay. I kind of want to do it, but I'm scared. I don't know.
Be scared.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one thing we learned from when we did it was do it in a smaller setting.
Yes.
Because we were there with 30 other people. And when they have 30 souls are experiencing hell at the same time, it was like hell. The sounds you were hearing, the things you were seeing, it could have been a little different, but I wouldn't have changed what I experienced because it was meant for us to see it that way. But yeah, I would say like they do like a thorough evaluation too before you get there, you have to submit your paperwork, any conditions, any health concerns you have, and then they'll ask you again. Like there's some people that are bipolar or they have certain other issues. You're probably not going to be. You can't do it because it's just they cannot be responsible for anything what's happened, and they don't know what happened to you when you leave that place.
Okay, interesting. You actually kind of segued now something into my next question because you said hell there, and you brought that up, and I think I saw you nodding your head. So here's what I want to ask you: does heaven and hell exist? Do you think there is a heaven and there is a hell?
So again, it just ties back to what we experienced. I think the first night for me was hell, and the second night was heaven. So I feel I experienced it. Again, I was under medicine, so I'm not sure, but I did recently watch 28 Days Haunted on Netflix. I think you both have watched it as well. Yeah. It felt real. I was like, this is it. Like I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but please watch it. It's a really great series on Netflix. That also helped me to kind of realize I think there is a heaven and a hell of where you're trapped, like you're trapped in this realm or whatever realm you're in, and your soul is not being free. It's almost like just like us humans, where the ones who climb Mount Everest. There's some part of us inside that wants to get out of the body So we go try all these things. Us trying ayahuasca was like trying to escape out of our conditioning that we have. So yes, to answer your question.
So you do believe there is heaven and hell.
I don't know if the words are the right thing to use.
Right.
That's all the words that we know.
But that's what we know. But that's what I feel like it's the energy. Like I believe in that after I had the ayahuasca, because when we were under the influence within the first few hours, it felt like you were in a hell, and it wasn't just me. You've looked around, everybody was going through that same type of dark journey. And when you close your eyes, what I felt, and when I asked other people the next day, we all felt the same thing. We felt like we were in this dimension where we were in the dark soul dimension. So there was dark souls all around us, and they kept trying to come to you, and they'd be like, hey, and their energy and the feeling they brought was of them, we're not happy, we're in a dark place, this is not like heaven for us. And it just felt like what you see like in a cartoon movie where they're all like, it's just like you're in space and there's all these souls just floating around, but they're not the happy souls, they're the lost souls, the lost unhappy souls that are just trying to latch on to somebody else that's coming up. It's like you're trying to get to heaven, but you're not beelining it directly to you guys. We took a medicine that's letting us get to you guys, and we're floating around here like, where do we go? Where do we go? Are we trying to get to the top? And they were trying to keep you in that realm. And that was my experience. I asked a few other people the next day, that's a similar experience they had. And that made me realize it, because the next day, then I went to heaven, which was like my version of paradise and heaven. And everybody had that same experience, because people were sleeping like a baby, making like happy sounds. Everybody woke up happy. Like we woke up extremely happy. We were happy for like days after that, like extremely happy.
How long is an ayahuasca trip? Because it is like a trip, right? You're going
7 hours?
6 to 7 hours for the peak, and then it tapers off. And then it still stays in your system. Like when we first came into the place, they were boiling it on the stove, and she didn't notice it. But right when I walked in, within the first 5 minutes, I got this, like I was high, like I'd smoked weed, because I just felt like, I was like, you could feel the vapors and everything in the air. And I went to go shower upstairs, and I'm like, looking at my hand, I'm like, oh, it's coming into effect. So I felt it immediately, like the vapors in the air.
That's like contact high, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I felt it. But the peak is 6 to 7 hours. And then the next day, you're still in a groggy-ish state, right? You're not like, what you went through, you're still trying to process and deal with. And then you had another 6, 7 hours.
And again, I think the processing doesn't end, because I find myself on a weekly basis still thinking about that and thinking, where did I go? What was that? Like I said, it was probably the most profound experience in my life that I think about on a weekly basis. I would probably do it again in a couple of years.
Wow.
Yes,
Right now, because it's a little scary. It was scary.
When I first came back, I was like, I'm never doing this again. But after about like 6-8 months, you realize what you got out of it, what you continue to get out of it, how you see things in different perspectives and different angles. So I see I could see myself doing it again, but I would probably go to Peru or go straight to the source and do there. Because when you go there, they do a 4-night, 5-day type of experience. Boy. Smaller group setting.
Y'all got me all scared to do. I want to do it, but I don't want to do it. I'm the only one out of the group that hasn't experienced this level of bliss or this this unknown. It's the unknown.
The unknown. But the level of bliss that you get from it, and like Al said, what you get from that, if you continue doing the work after when you come back, is priceless. Yeah. It's priceless.
Okay. Like before I went there, I used to hear that saying, that saying, "Stay woke." Yeah, I'm woke. I'm woke now.
You're awake.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Okay, now, so going into, we've kind of, spoken a little bit about your experience with spirit, the realm, as you say. Is that the right way to say it? Realm? Yeah. The unknown, spirits, life after death, soul. So, next question. I didn't answer.
Yeah, you didn't answer.
And I didn't answer. See, that's what happens when you're the moderator. Now I know how you feel. Okay, do heaven and hell exist? Okay, so heaven and hell, this is a term I think that society's made up, or, from like Christianity, Catholic religion, and from all of the religions, and just including ours, Sikhism, that, we just say, you're going to hell, because our parents used to say that when we were younger, you're going straight to hell. They would never say you're going to heaven if you did something good. Do you notice that?
Yeah, you're right. It was just a way to hold that fear, instill that fear in you.
Yeah. Okay. Guys. So heaven and hell. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know anything. I am still learning as I'm going through this journey called life. But whatever you want to call it, whether it's heaven, aka paradise, hell, a really dark place. Yes, I think the two exist. And I think from both of your experience from ayahuasca, and I also know when you two were going through ayahuasca, I was experiencing, because we're so connected, some strange symptoms, like gag reflex, things that you guys, or whatever you were experiencing at that time, I was feeling it in a different time zone. So I do believe that we're connected. I do believe that there's something out there. I just don't know what it is. There's light and there's darkness. And maybe if we want to call that my version of heaven and hell, but yes, there's light when you cross over. You go to an amazing place where it's love, light, abundance. It's free. You're happy. You don't have any shoulder pains or aches and pains or no migraines. You're just free. And I think darkness, if you don't do the good deeds, Al, like you mentioned, if you lied, if you cheat, if you're cruel in this present life, all of those karmic debts, I like to say, like they start to add up. And then it's like the universe is like, whatever you want to say, God, spirituality. But the universe says, hey, you know what? You didn't finish your work. You didn't learn some things. I'm sending you to darkness. And that's, I guess, maybe hell. So I do believe there's two components out there after life. Yes. Okay. So what I want to ask you is there's a lot of these psychic medium shows out there. People go do tarot cards, psychic readings and whatnot. Do you believe, either of you believe in psychic mediums?
Yep, I do.
Why?
I go to them and I'll ask them questions to see, like, to give them tests. And the few ones that I've been to generally have been referred by somebody, or I found them on Google, saw their reviews. I think 5-star reviews out of 100. I was like, why not try them out?
Good old Google.
We spend our money on more useless things sometimes. So what's $100 here? So I've tried them out, and the stuff they've told me, you only know when it's really true about 6 months later, when you start seeing what they said was going to happen and it happens. There's been a few where they'll tell you about what you've experienced or who's in your life, or send you a message, and that how they said it or what they said, only that person would have said it. So that gives you that it reaffirms that, like, okay, well, we know we're telling you the truth. Like that Tyler Henry on Netflix, the stuff he says, like with the celebrities, like even the celebrities would say, there's no way you would know this unless you hung out with us during that time, like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So there's a few of them been to, and I would say they're 80% accurate. Like the stuff they said that what would happen, and then 6 months later that thing happens, and you're like, wow, okay, like you got to be. I think you got to be crazy not to believe in it, and to say that you can only believe in science. That's kind of ignorant for us to say that there's nothing higher out there, or a higher power than us. So I believe in it because I've had my own experiences and what they've told to me and what they've said to me. Like I could not believe it. Like you would have to have been there with me and my uncle at that time for you to have said that or heard that experience. Right. So to me, I think there's a lot of phony people out there that pretend to be. But after watching a show on Netflix called Surviving Death, they have a training school. I think it's in Denmark somewhere. So it shows like people, if they really want to be, like some people I think are naturally more in tune with their psychic side. And there's some people that want to, and they can become more in tune with their psychic side. But I believe in it.
Okay, so if there is someone who's skeptical, if we have a skeptic listening right now, what would you say to them?
I would say, well, find somebody that's in your area that has got a good reviews, and take a set of questions and ask them stuff that's like very generic, or ask them a question that only like you would know that the answer to see what they say. And if it's someone that you want to communicate with on the other side, like a loved one, then ask them before you go to say, hey, can you come through and say these things to me when I go and speak with that person, so I can get that, like the connection, and understand that, okay, this is real. Right. There's going to be always some people that are still skeptical and say, okay, maybe they got on Facebook, maybe they got this. Give them a fake name before you go there. Give them all these fake details before you go there until you get there and see it. Like, there's plenty of ways to do investigative work. Yeah,
because a good psychic will be able to unravel and figure things out, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a skeptic. I'm intrigued by this. I'm intrigued by their ability to connect or have a direct link to the after, or people that have crossed over, and souls for that matter. But I've never had a psychic medium. I feel like you two are doing some cool things, and I need to kind of like latch on.
I haven't done enough of psychic stuff. maybe in my 20s, I participated and never took it seriously. I also don't think I was as open then. So I don't think I was able to let you receive any information from me. What I will say though, is when you start to quiet the mind, you start doing your own meditation, you really can start tapping into your own psychic abilities. I think we all have that innate gift in us. It's just doing the work.
That intuition.
Because that little voice that's inside you, we always seem to like quiet it out, but that little voice is always right. For me, every time that voices come up and I'm like, my mind will override it and say, no, it's not right. That somehow manifests in my life. And I'm like, should have just listened to that. And it's the smallest little, it's like that little light voice that comes in. It's so faint and it'll tell you something that you don't want to hear. And you're like, no, I'm going to override it. And then 5 or 6 months later, I'm like, damn. We're right.
Intuition, your sixth sense, whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. Well, this is great. I do have some more questions that I wanted to go into, but why don't we save it for the Life After Death Part 2?
Sure.